Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And we are today talking to, or we have with us on Beyond Disruption, Salman Tariq, who is the CEO of Davaam. And Davaam is an energy services company based out of Karachi. And I'm just going to hand over to Salman to introduce himself briefly and tell us a bit about what he does.
Thank you, Hira, for having me. Yes, Davaam is a 2.5 year old company. It's a startup, and we're an energy services company that focuses on clean energy solutions. That's a big, vague, it's a vast term, but that's the kind of work that we do. We focus on solving some of the energy problems that there are in the industry, in the private sector, and facilities by kind of incorporating clean tech solutions. That could be renewable energy, that could be energy efficiency, wastewater problems, and waste management. That's a broad spectrum. But our entire idea is that we are an aggregator of services. Sometimes energy problems don't require one particular solution, it requires a whole host of things that you need to do. And what we aim to be is a one window solution provider where we can come in, look at a problem, and apply these different solutions out there, and be that one window solution that actually proposes a solution and also implements this for facilities, for private organizations, etc. The clean energy the systems approach is that everything is interlinked. Solar could be interlinked with energy efficiency, power, water, waste, and we need to have a bit of a kind of a broader solution out
Yeah.
there which can tackle multiple things at the same time, because they're interlinked problems, and you can't be just forcing this one solution because you're, say, into solar. And that's our entire idea out there. So we're doing multiple things within
Mm-hmm.
Davam. Just to let you know, we're doing solar. Obviously, that's the first thing that we started, and something that obviously we go for a solution for somebody who wants to reduce their electricity bill or kind of have self sustainability. But apart from solar, we also promote energy efficiency. We have Pakistan's first energy and environment saving marketplace, which is like an e-commerce marketplace that we've dedicated for energy efficiency. It's dvm.com.pk, and our idea was to kind of promote technologies that are out there on this single platform. So you could find even solar panels, inverters, LED lights, even biodegradable cutlery out there. Anything that
Okay.
saves the environment and energy can be available on that platform, and that really defines the WAM as a service, as an aggregator. We have amazing engineering talent in Pakistan. We all
Mm-hmm.
know that we are the kings of jugaad, and that comes from this engineering mindset, this short fixes. We love, fixing things and whatnot.
Yeah.
But the problem with these engineers and the talent out there is the commercialization of this business, and that's where we come in and kind of help, saying, okay, we've got this platform out there where you can demonstrate your product. We go out there, we meet with industries, we look at their problems, and this is something that
Mm.
we can propose your solution to them, so you don't have to worry about selling and the marketing bit of things. We come in and aggregate this for them. So in a
Right.
nutshell, that's the farm as far as solar and energy efficiency. And obviously we're incorporating water through water partners. We have a waste project which is close to our hearts,
Mm.
which is kindly sort of separate from energy and energy efficiency. Solar is kind of power related, but waste is something that we see opportunity
Right.
out there.
Right.
There are a lot of things happening out there. We have a services team as well. We have a retail model that's coming up, which is kind of halted because of Corona, but we're trying to do a bit of everything out there.
So, how did you kind of get into this space? Because I know I was introduced to you through K Electric,
Yes.
and when I think K Electric, it doesn't necessarily, maybe more in the coming years, but at that time it wasn't really synonymous to solar, renewable, or clean energy. So how the shift happened?
Yeah, so K Electric was my first job like 10 years back. It wasn't the organization that people, when they graduated from Pakistan, would hope to kind of be employed at K Electric, right? This is
Okay.
2009. In
Okay.
2009, there was no WhatsApp and even Facebook was 2 years old. I think
Yeah.
there was no activism. Graduates weren't even open to going to public sector utilities and NGOs. They all just wanted to go into banks and FMCGs and or just pursue their graduate studies.
Yeah.
I just happened to stumble upon K Electric. It was complete fluke. I had no plans on sticking around in the power sector. I'm not an engineer, right? And that's the biggest thing over here. When people think about when you work at K Electric or you have to do something with energy, you must be an engineer. This is
Yep.
the reason why I'm actually teaching right now at a university in their social development policy program, because I look at my trajectory 10 years ago where I came into this sector. I didn't even know it existed. What's the power sector? How is it that somebody can, and now 10 years down the line I hire 10 engineers and I have an company where the core product is engineering. But what you need to understand, there's so much of market innovation, commercialization built around that core product, policy. So it's not just engineering. This is why I want to also kind of teach this subject in schools and curriculum which is not engineering
Mm.
focused. So 10 years ago I stumbled upon this opportunity. At that point in time it was kind of like K Electric was going through a lot of changes. It was recently privatized, so they turned around in those 2 years
Yep.
that I was there. I probably had a part to play, I guess. But in those two turnaround years I was there, kind of in the middle of the action, and there was a lot of
Right.
interesting things on. But it's where I was working in the business development
Mm.
department. Business development department kind of looked at how we could, how the company could improve or incorporate renewable, projects. And there I worked on a waste to energy project with my current co-founder, who used to be my boss now, Omar. And I, that's where our love for waste and poop and everything to do with kachra started, right? And how do we create this massive there's a massive opportunity out there. So our first project was Landi Cattle Colony, which I've worked next for the 5 6 years.
Mm.
How to convert cow manure into electricity. That's still going on some way or the other, not with K Electric, but through other.
Yep.
But that's where I got into renewable energy. And over the years I went for my masters. I came back after 2.5 years ago, and so we got together. We thought that there's so much opportunity out there in clean energy, especially energy efficiency, which
Mm-hmm.
I kind of,
Mm-hmm.
when I went to US, I found out it's a whole new sector out there, and
Right.
we don't
Right.
think much in that sector. For us, there is a single side, solution available. That's a supply side solution, right?
Right.
Power outages, we need more supply. There is oil, okay, so let's go to solar again. Supply, supply, supply. But
Yep.
demand side are so much more important. They have
Right.
lower pay, they save more as far as environment savings is concerned, because there's so much of energy losses, and through the transformation of energy you save by doing demand side intervention. So this was a 10-year journey where I worked with K Electric, developed interest in the power sector, renewable energy sector. I kind of built upon,
Yep.
added my master's degree to it. And now I think there's so much that can be done privately.
Yep.
Forget about the government. People look at, government should do this, do that, do that. I mean, before even the government, you stop like thinking that government will do things. Sure, they should do it, but so much that the private
Yep.
sector can do in this sector. And the most important thing through our, dealing with the private sector and through our
Yep.
startup is tell people is clean energy and clean tech and green is not just a good thing to do. People
Yep.
will not, still talk environment is good, but you ask them to spend money, they won't, because they
Mm-hmm.
think it's a waste of money. What we need to tell and what we tell our clients is, okay, forget about clean and environment. It's financially, beneficial for you to do it. There's an
Yep.
economics behind it. You save money. There's 3 years 4 years payback, say, for solar, for energy efficiency. So if not for the environment, do it for the money. And that's what we need to keep, talking about.
Yeah. So, and I understand this is also coming from the demand side that you're really talking about, that you have to come up with solutions that cater to the demands, but at the same time there is a mismatch because the consumer doesn't really understand, and he wants to always save a quick buck. And yes, हमारी कोई thought process ऐसी है कि आज के दिन में हमें 5 रुपए बचाने हैं, whereas हम अगले 3 दिन में 50 रुपए का नुकसान कर बैठेंगे, लेकिन आज वो 5 रुपए हमें बचाने हैं. So,
Yeah.
how does that really affect the kind of work that you've set out to do? You know, um,
No, it's true. I mean, for clean energy technologies, solar or renewable energy or energy efficiency, the problem with these is there's a high upfront cost,
right.
right? And their advantage obviously is that you recover this high upfront cost through low operational costs. And you're
Hmm.
right that consumers have a mindset that if you give them a solution where they have to spend more money upfront, they would shy away from that, right?
Yep.
It's not, that rational consumer where they have a financial model and they're recovering this in so many years. It's
Yep.
good on paper, but the consumer mindset is that the cost is high. But then
Yep.
this was also true in the West, where now they're in Europe and US, where they're kind of spearheading, clean energy technologies and energy efficiency. The way they solved it was they broke it down into lease financing, just like we have lease financing or a pay for service model
Right.
for to get ACs and fans and cars.
Yep.
Why can't we renewable energy like solar energy solutions or energy efficiency? In the last 2 3 years, I can say it for solar at least, we
Mm.
have a State Bank of Pakistan financing at 6%
Yep.
available.
Yep.
And obviously when this market interest rates were 13%, this was really attractive. And the idea was to kind of get consumers to adopt these clean energy solutions where they don't have to
Yep.
pay up, right? The other problem was to get the banks and the commercial and the lenders understand what solar is. While this
Yep.
financing is available from State Bank of Pakistan, banks didn't even know. So a while back, I was involved in this consultancy where I was training some of these large commercial banks, and it took you know 3 years. It took them 3 days of that intensive training for them to understand the economics behind solar. And
Yep.
it's that they kind of got excited about this technology, and they were at the end of the training were calling their existing clients that industries should get solar right now. So
Yeah.
there's a lack of understanding in the market, be it consumers as well as financial institutions. But the original question that you had, that there is an upfront cost involved, it can be solved. It's just about commercial solutions that need to be deployed. This is something that we are working right now. While solar is an obvious case, we're working it for energy efficiency. If there is
Yep.
a facility out there and you're asking them to replace their fans and bulbs and lights and ACs, okay, then how do we, if they don't have the capital upfront to do that, how can we make this as energy efficiency as a service model? So we're working on
Yep.
that right now. Some of these innovative commercial models combined
Yep.
with technology will kind of get these rolling.
So, do you think it makes more sense to take uh, take out the existing system, just kind of put it on the side and get into something new altogether, or would it make more sense to phase things out, let things run the way they are right now, and then slowly phase things out? And I understand there is this climate emergency also that we have to deal with. So sometimes the proponents of climate would actually say that move to renewable or just completely go there right now, but doesn't make sense from an economic, and I believe you understand economics a little bit more than most of us. So doesn't make sense to go do that completely, or to phase things out? What
I
should the
mean,
approach be?
it has to be marginal changes, right? You have to tell people that, I mean, look at electric vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
It's not gonna be an overnight change where people ditch their internal combustion engine cars and
Yeah.
tomorrow buy an EV, which is 30% extra. There is an infrastructure that needs to be placed, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a chicken egg problem in this entire EV thing, right? Does
Yeah.
the car come first or the charging station comes first? And there's a huge network of charging stations that need to be installed out there. But this is where policy is so important, where you incentivize these private consumers, or it's,
Mm-hmm.
in 10 years back there was a policy where the government wanted gas going into the transport sector, because at that point in time they were importing oil, right?
Yep.
In 2000, early 2000s, overnight you saw CNG stations coming up. There was these CNG kits going. In the medium term, some of these manufacturers started then manufacturing built-in CNG cars. So that's where policy comes in. That will take a few years to come up. But right now, just saying that there's going to be a revolution out there,
Mm-hmm.
while there is emergency, I understand, but it has to be like marginal steps. So let's get in solar as much as we can. We've got the net metering policy. People now understand. I've got bills for clients saying no payment required on their bills. So,
Mm-hmm.
just to get people excited about things, people are also, are on a different wavelength over here.
Yeah.
From one end, they say we should have 100% solar, not thinking about what are we going to do like after 7 p.m.
Yep.
Battery technology is not there. On the other hand, there's another consumer that says, I don't believe in this technology because,
Yep.
somebody advised me this doesn't work. So we have to balance all of these things. And uh,
Mm.
industries and private consumers need to adopt these clean energy technologies. And
Yep.
when we give
Yeah.
these commercial solutions and when we give them this informational power that it will save you money is when the mass market will actually adopt these solutions. So the
Mm.
policy can actually direct you towards all of these things, but it has to be the mass market, and it will be a curve where we start doing things. But for climate change and all of these things, we have to understand it's not just one thing that we need to do. There are multiple things that we need to do. Right? It's not just the power sector; it has to be the transport sector, the thermal sector as well, and all of these things need to happen rapidly. As we're just seeing that we've got these clear skies and less emissions right now. At
Yeah.
least
Yeah.
least I understand that this is all going to go away as soon as we're back to the normal. But
Yeah.
at least for those people in the policy making circles, especially in the Western world, who believe that this is a hoax and climate change is fake, at least now they know that it's not, right? And at least for those people who doubt the solutions that are being provided right now, चाहे वो EVs हो या वो clean energy हो, at least it's a visible example for them saying it's nature's way of giving you a pre-post analysis, which
Yep.
otherwise would have been a very expensive research study confined to a small lab doing an RCT sampling and a small report that nobody would read. Now nature is telling you here is a big research study I'm doing for you. It's very costly. It's costing our health system, our economic models, but
Yep. Yep.
our takeaway should be this is the pre and post of what we need to do now. When we go back to the normal, how quickly do we need to transition? The idea of energy efficiency is you keep doing the same work but
Yep.
efficiently doing the less output. So how do we go back to the same level of GDP and employment but using those energy sources which actually save us this million tons of oil equivalent of energy that we've just stopped right now because of lack of demand.
Yep. But don't you think that that requires a lot of, like you mentioned, that even with the technologies, whether it's transport, whether it's manufacturing, pharmaceutical, whatever else, there is the need for how the word would be interdependence, right? So everything is interdependent on each other. It's not independent. So do you think, and like you even mentioned a little bit earlier in our discussion, that banks don't have the information, and people don't have the information. So how do you think we can really bring all of this together? What do we need to do to bridge this gap where we can actually manage the interdependences? Because it's not going to happen individually. The government is not just going to be able to do it alone, right? And neither will the private sector, while it's much faster to do it as a private sector person. But what do we really need, to make sure that everybody is really on the same table, or really putting in their energies toward it?
No, true. I think it's a lot of private sector and the government sector needs to come together. Especially from the context of Pakistan, obviously, the government needs to spearhead this by providing a policy direction, right? For example, in solar right now, it's uh, in the last year was way better than the year before that because you had net metering laws coming in, right? So
Yeah.
now you've got, I was reading 20 megawatts was connected through net metering. There's a lot of solar happening in the remote areas of Pakistan, but it's because of these policies that people thought that these are affordable systems that they can adopt. And obviously government as a buyer, it also has public buildings, it's also a consumer of energy, needs to um, manage its own energy consumption in a way which will indicate and signal to the private sector where they would want the private sector to go. So
Yeah.
policy and all of these things need to come together. But for environment, obviously, in a larger context, again, it's not something that Pakistan alone. If they do something, then their environment would be better off. As you just saw in Lahore, for example, there were cross boundary things happening or emissions coming from across the border, uh, at least some part of it impacted the air quality in Lahore. So now it's a question of politics being involved, where you need to have regional cooperation. The other thing that you need to also see is everything is relative. There is an economic impact. So suddenly oil prices driving down, the relative economics of renewable energy suddenly becomes less feasible. But it's a transitioning energy market out there, regardless
Mm.
of low oil prices or not. The private sector and markets need stability. As far as Pakistan is concerned, we're 50% dependent on imported energy. Our gas reserves are depleting.
Yep.
The only indigenous reserves are coal, uh, which is not clean. While the world moves away from coal, we are kind of suddenly embracing coal. While in the last 5 years, Pakistan has had a on in the green market, been kind of at the forefront with this 10 billion
Yeah.
tsunami, clean energy policies, a 30% renewable energy target. But on the same time, we're kind of going and embracing coal. So there are energy security and cost and environment factors that need to be balanced by the government. But I still believe that a first few steps that have been taken, for example, having a 30% renewable target for Pakistan,
Yeah.
having an electric vehicle policy, a bit late, but the implementation is very important.
Yeah.
And people need to understand that transport sector also is very important in reducing these emissions. In Pakistan,
Yeah.
somehow everything is so focused on the power sector, like even the T&D, the transmission and distribution losses. We don't care about the gas losses that there are. We don't care about the
Yeah.
transportation losses. 90% of the energy that goes into the transportation sector is wasted, right? We only end up utilizing 10% of things. So how do we? So it has to be a mix and match. And if you look at the this case study done on Beijing by UN, for how they've improved their energy quality in the last 20 years, you'll see that they've done like 10 to 15 different things. And they were
Yeah.
able to do it because of the political system that they have. It's easier for most of the administrative departments to coordinate with each other. So they moved away from coal. They increased the sulfur scrubbing in coal. Their transportation is completely in EVs. They've got public sector, public transportation system. They have air quality monitoring. So that's a lot of things to be done over a lot of departments which they've coordinated. So it will be a challenge, but at the same time, I mean, you have to do it. It's not going to be on one day we've got this fossil fuel based economy, and
Yeah.
tomorrow it's going to be a renewable
Yeah.
energy economy. Where we are today as far as clean energy, we're way ahead than what we were 2 3 years ago.
Absolutely.
The rate has to
Absolutely.
increase. Rate has to increase, and that will need to come from private sector incentives.
Yeah, yeah. So definitely, I don't think the change can happen overnight, but the will to change can definitely happen, and that is something that we saw significantly in the last year. I mean, the state bank policy for green financing was formalized. The ADB moved towards a renewable energy policy that was more holistic, and definitely it gave a lot of things a lot more thought. They're trying to engage a whole lot of different things in it, the 2030 vision and the 30% inclusion. Again, there are other factors that are going to come into play, given that there are a lot of stakeholders that need to be taken on board, and yes, a lot of them believe that coal and oil are the solution, or indigenous resources like hydro. But I had actually one of them mentioning how right now we're focusing on hydro, and then we want to get into coal, and then we want to get back to hydro, and giving me some kind of a prediction, which in my head was very much aligned with a Chinese trajectory. So let's not get into that debate. It was a lot of political and other factors coming into play. Also, I mean, several other policies as well. That the EV policy, for example. Now, I love the fact that they were working on it, but what I thought was a challenge was that one, the interconnectedness was not there. So the Ministry of Climate Change is promoting the EV policy, and then all of a sudden, a Ministry of Power says no, 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 that's my work, and then Ministry of Commerce says, hey, no, that's mine because it's industrialization. So you have these challenges to sort of overcome as well. But while we're struggling, yeah,
Yeah. No, and also the fact that the government is also trying to move away to a more liberalized market, with trying to have a wholesale electricity market, trying to define boundaries between different organizations. CPPAG that was formed out of
Yeah,
NTDC is a separate entity now. K Electric only being the privatized entity, they have plans to privatize other entities. But
yeah,
I would the thing I would be looking forward to is the liberalization of the end user market, the retail market. I would
right.
want to be an ESCO, an energy services company.
Yeah,
I cannot. So if there are people in Karachi who want solar, and I kind of want to, rather than selling them solar panels and the system, which is an upfront cost, if I want to put up that energy as a service model where I put up panels on the rooftop
yeah,
and sell electricity, which is a PPA model, which is how Sun Edison in USA 10 years back kind of got this solar on every rooftop, was this PPA
yeah,
model where people did not have to invest in solar. I cannot do that in Karachi right now because that's illegal, because there is
right,
you you cannot sell electricity apart from that, because utilities have an exclusive right now.
right,
uh,
right.
so whenever their distribution licenses expire, I want to see a market where private players like me as the WAM, I would want to go in and sell electricity, power out of the solar energy system. I want to sell power out of energy efficiency services, but I
Yeah,
can't do that right now. So while there is a challenge, there is sometimes when we talk about technical possibilities, it's not just technical possibilities,
yeah.
it's also commercial possibilities and some legal hurdles which are kind of holding the private sector back in some of these innovative solutions that could be deployed out there.
I think it comes back to understanding the demand side and not trying to just supply, and really thinking about what the customer needs, and then kind of, changing the even the legal aspects to facilitate that, to really support that. So I think we've already spoken about this, but somebody's also asked us that when do you see renewable becoming more viable and feasible than oil? Do
Right
you, do
now,
you, yeah, like
as
now
in,
is the
yes,
time?
but renewable. I mean, there's so many things in renewable, right? But solar is solar and wind obviously have are way beyond grid parity.
Yeah,
Some of the tariffs that are coming out of competitive bidding, which again, policymakers in Pakistan want to implement, but they still haven't been able to. Some of the tariffs that are crazy. There are 2-3 cents tariffs are coming out there. Um, but yeah, solar right now, when I tell private owners, residential industries, uh, they can reduce their power cost by half just by deploying solar, right? The average grid tariff over here is what, 12 rupees for industries with a subsidy. When you add taxes, comes 15 rupees a
yeah,
unit. When I look at the LCOE, or the levelized cost of electricity for solar with financing cost, maybe comes out to be 7.5 rupees. So that's 50% cheaper, right? It's just that people don't know about it. So renewable is cheaper right now. The renewable has other problems, that it's got variability. There's a certain percentage that you can add into the grid without the entire grid being not stable. And but this was always the argument for the fossil fuel industries, that coal, oil, and gas give you base load power. They're dispatchable.
yeah,
That you can,
yeah,
on a phone call, within half an hour, you can get electricity when required. You can't do that with solar and wind. Solar will
yeah,
only give you when there's sunlight, and wind will only give you when
yeah,
there's wind power. But with the with adding of these battery technologies, which is following the same exponential curve as solar saw in the last decade, that changes the
mm,
equation. Now combining battery storage with renewable power makes renewable energy more dispatchable. And this is where I see what's missing in our renewable policy as well. The problem is today we're making decision on coal based power plants which will be there 25 years, 30 years, right? In,
yeah,
if not today, in 2 to 3 years, battery technology will be, or battery plus solar will be cheaper than, I would say, coal. So we need to be forward looking in our policy making. What are we
yeah,
doing in trying to get storage technologies over here, especially considering the fact that 75 the electrification rate in Pakistan is 75%, and some of these areas which still don't have modern energy in Pakistan are these remote areas. You cannot take the grid out there, and because
Yeah.
that's very expensive, so you need to rely on these renewables plus battery storage technologies, which will get access to modern energy into these isolated pockets.
So yeah, I think that makes sense as well, and that's where we probably need to explore, the small solutions and decentralized solutions as well, or providing a sort of a mini grid or a microgrid kind of a situation that's more localized than a large scale utility kind of a setup. But having
Yeah.
said that, there was great work that was done in the last year, but now this situation with COVID has, or at least, even while I'm following the news, it's somehow brought things to a halt. Where people aren't really focusing on um, in or continuing the work that was happening, and there's a little bit of a breather or a pause. So, do you think that moving forward, when this pandemic ends, in the next 12 months, in the next 18 months, uh, if if we pause right now, it means we would have to go back another year and start things again from scratch, or even within all of this, we need to continue the discussion and keep working on the things that we were working on without really, sort of pausing it right now.
All of those people in the clean technology sector should really get ready, because there's going to be so much opportunity now,
Yeah,
right? Because look, businesses are now going to look at cost cutting, and they would look at administrative expenses over here. So clean energy technologies do all of those for you, right?
yeah,
Especially if I now look at energy efficiency and solar, there is going to be a huge demand. It's just that business owners over here, they have this mindset that every month there's going to be a utility expense. The admin guy is looking at it, it's budgeted. Next year the prices increase, they're like, oh my god, the government this, government that, okay, here's a 5% increase. Nobody looks at those things. Now they would be demanding, their business models are going to become sleek. They would make sure that any fat out there should be cut, and that's an
yeah,
opportunity for our sector out there. Most importantly, when we look at the renewable energy and clean energy technologies, you look at a decentralized market structure, right? You look
yeah,
at how do we become sustainable and not dependent on utilities, which is now coming out there and giving me an average billing, which will increase my bill, right? How do
yeah,
I wean off from the utility? That's your clean energy technology, that's your energy efficiency.
yeah,
So I would say there will be a lot of work, while the demand right now is decreased, but there will be a lot of work. The constraint would be, the challenge would be the cash flow constraint,
mm-hmm.
because now businesses and private facilities will probably save for essential services, and that's
Yeah,
where again I say that the commercial model of breaking down these energy technologies, the products, machines into services which are monthly will
yeah,
actually be required more and more. So that's the only way that there would be a large uptake. People would be more, positive for getting into these kind of technologies if you're not asking for an amount which is upfront. So I think energy as a service model should pick up. There will be a lot of opportunities, but we have to keep the conversation going, because right now, while there is suppression of demand,
yeah,
there is a model out there as far as environment is concerned, where we say, okay, this, if we need to go here where we are right now as far as emissions is concerned,
yeah,
how much of this energy or fossil fuel based energy do we need to substitute now going forward? And that will only happen while not sacrificing your GDP. That will only happen when you become more efficient or energy efficient, giving the same output but using less inputs.
yeah. So I think for me, it's quite clear that the economic transition or stability can only happen when you've built in the environmental case into it, and how it affects the people as well. So the triple bottom line model, where the profit coupled with planet and people. So which is something that I personally believe in. I if we can really bring our businesses to think in the same way, I think it becomes much better overall. So I would like to open up for questions if anyone's really has a question to ask at this point. I know Khalid Iqbal Saab is with us. He's actually saying a brief definition is required on the topic beyond disruption in ARE perspective or solar inclusive. So, Khalid Saab, the context of beyond disruption is that जो हमें समझ आती है कि डिस्ट्रप्शन तो वो है कि जब मार्केट में कोई नई चीज आ जाती है जिसने मार्केट को हिला दिया है, ठीक है, जो जो ट्रेडिशनल तरीके से काम चल रहा था वो सब चेंज हो गया है टुवर्ड्स अ डिफरेंट सॉर्ट ऑफ अ वे. Let's say the introduction of renewables, the introduction of the ability of being able to actually generate energy from waste. So you know, like आप बायोगैस से काम करते हैं, जो एक्चुअली काउ डंग, इट्स अ वेस्ट मटेरियल, राइट, but you can use it very efficiently to generate energy. So this is what disruption is. अब ये चीजें मार्केट में तो आ गई हैं. So the reason why हमने वेबकास्ट का नाम बियॉन्ड डिस्ट्रप्शन रखा हुआ है is just so that to understand how once you have access to all of these things, how are you really applying it, what's happening in the context of पाकिस्तान में वो कौन लोग हैं जो जो कि इन चीज़ों पे काम कर रहे हैं और किस तरह काम कर रहे हैं. क्योंकि हमारा बहुत बड़ा अलमिया ये कि हमें पता ही नहीं होता चीज़ों का. यू नो, मेरा मानना ये है कि, एंड सलमान करेक्ट मी इफ आई एम रॉन्ग, इफ यू व्हेन यू वर इन द यूएस, जो गोरा होता है ना वो छींक भी मारता है तो 500 पेज की किताब लिख देता है कि मैंने छींक कैसे मारी. और पाकिस्तान में हमारा मसला ये कि हमारे एकेडमिया से लेके गवर्नमेंट तक पॉलिसी मेकर्स, इंडिपेंडेंट जो लोग हैं, वो इतना बड़ा काम कर जाते हैं, बट हमें 2 लाइनें लिखने में इतनी तकलीफ होती है कि यू नो, unfortunately we are not able to really show the world all that we are doing and all that we are capable of. And hence something that we are trying to engage on is sharing this information and knowledge with the world, and how we are doing it as in our capacities through this discussion or through this medium of the internet, जहाँ पर हम beyond disruption की बात कर रहे हैं. And yes, it does include ARE, all sorts of AREs, solar, wind, others, whatever else there is. So, okay, Fatma is asking us that while we all know RE is the future, okay, what's she saying? Yeah, RE is the future, but how can Pakistan cope up to the trend given the fact we lack basic technology for local production of equipment such as panels, windmills, batteries, etc.? Salman, any input that you have on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, you have to see okay, what are we substituting, right? At the end of the day, the most important thing is this levelized cost of energy that you end up producing from, say, solar and wind or other technologies. And sometimes it's more beneficial for you to take the technology from where it is and then apply it over here. It's more cheaper than say importing oil. I understand that हम हर चीज खुद अभी बनाने का नहीं सोचे थे. Suddenly हम solar panels पाकिस्तान में produce नहीं कर सकते because अब हर चीज चाइना में चली गई. For example, let me give you an example for solar panels. I know people kind of take a backseat when they hear Chinese equipment, but as far as solar panel manufacturing is concerned, China has become the hub. There, even I think there's 2 or 3% of production now in European other parts, but China and Southeast Asia is now 90% of the production because they do it in bulk. And you will never be able to compete with China as far as making solar panels is concerned. उनकी जो एक कंपनी है जो सालाना पैनल प्रोड्यूस करती है वो 25 गीगावाट्स है. पाकिस्तान का पूरा एनर्जी डिमांड ही 25 गीगावाट्स है. तो कभी हम इतना पैनल बना ही नहीं सकते कि हम वो कॉस्ट कंपैरेटिव हो सकते हैं. सो एंड ऑब्वियसली देयर आर इंसेंटिव्स आउट देयर. दिस इज वेयर पॉलिसी कम्स इनटू प्ले, वेयर द गवर्नमेंट हैज गिवन incentives for importing these solar panels and some of these equipment. There is no taxes, there is no GST, there is no income tax. What's important is when we get these equipment, we locally assemble over here and we have a solar power plant that is 50% at the cost of electricity what it's substituting if there is oil. So I do agree that some of the things that we over time need to kind of increase our knowledge in local production capability. For example, battery storage. इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल्स जो हैं उसका इंटायर बेस जो है बैटरी स्टोरेज पे जाएगा. जो रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी solutions भी होंगे in isolated areas will require battery technologies, and we need to incentivize the manufacturers over here to make affordable energy storage. But in the meantime, till we get those, it's cheaper right now to get those panels and equipment from outside. Denmark in the 1970s decided to shift away from all of this, and now they're the leading manufacturers of windmills or wind turbines actually. So it took them 30-40 years of kind of having a policy push and innovation to get to a point where now they're supplying to the rest of the world.
Yeah. I think there's a little bit of add-on that Fatma's also said, that how can we shift from import to indigenous production? And coming back to what you just said, that it's cheaper to import. I would think perhaps we should just focus on what our strength is. So, for example, panel manufacturing में हमें बिल्कुल कोई भी idea नहीं है, but battery manufacturers हमारे पास चार पांच तो हैं. I'm aware of three. I think there are a little bit few more than that. So if we already have that expertise, why can't we improve what we have, and bring down the overall cost, as opposed to importing batteries and stuff from because what I believe is that जो अच्छी बैटरीज या जो कि हमारे लिए रेलेवेंट हैं, वो अभी भी यूरोपियन कंट्रीज से आएंगी जो ज़्यादा महंगी होंगी than what China gives us. Whereas the panels, for example, like
raw material, right? It also depends on like for example, right now the battery manufacturers in Pakistan are just using dry gel batteries, jo ke hain, and they're cheap. They've been used. The market has been using those, but they just last 2 to 3 years. The newer ones that are coming up, which are revolutionizing the EV industry and also the solar power, as lithium, right? So we got to see, do we even have the, again, people say that lithium is also, it's not a renewable source. At the end of the day, it's going to run out. While solar PV is silicon, and that's just like sand. The manufacturing process is quite complicated. We will never be able to go to a manufacturing quantity where we can be competing with Chinese market. So it's better to kind of focus on जहाँ पे हम लोगों का capital बचेगा और जहाँ पे again हमारी expertise है. So yes, I would say go towards more innovative models for batteries, not just follow the world and go for lithium. There's flow batteries coming in, which is also important. But the idea is to make quality products that can actually last long, or upfront capital ke bajaye just look at the entire life cycle cost of projects is very important.
So I think that makes sense, that the life cycle and the quality are two things that we often overlook. And it comes down to our mentality of saving 5 rupees today. So, if we can just become ready to embrace that, zameen asman ka fark ho sakta hai, and, the kind of things that could happen, definitely. And of course, with Fatma's also saying, with the fragile economy and the exchange rates, how long would this really be feasible? Again, that's some kind of a reality that we'll have to live with and figure out, because ये rates तो change नहीं होने वाले ना, economy हमारी overnight turn होगी. So I think the interesting thing is, what are the business models that we come up with that can work around this challenge. That's I think what even Salman, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's what you're also trying to advocate.
Yes, and look, the idea is to, when you think about clean technologies and renewable energy, you got to think about a distributed generation system. You need to understand that pehle zamane mein, when we used to have power sector set up, there used to be a centralized power plant that had to be transmitted and transported long distances. The idea of renewable energy technologies is that you could have a power plant, a small power plant, right there at your doorstep, where the end consumer where the end energy has to be consumed, so you don't have to transmit them long distances. That's why you can be a producer of electricity. There is a new term called prosumers, right? आप जब आप solar लगाते हैं अपने rooftop पे, you get a generation license. You're not only a consumer of electricity, you're also a producer of electricity, because you can have that electricity that you're producing for your own consumption, but you can also sell it back to the grid, like K Electric or Lesco or Fesco, any of these distribution companies. And the idea of renewable energy technologies and their advantage is that you can have targeted interventions where there are pockets without electricity, or there is not much of a quality of electricity supply. And that's where, when you have private sector participation in making their own electricity through distributed renewable energy generation systems like variable renewable energy technologies, you rely less on the centralized power grid. And because you are now taking care of your own electricity needs, the government does not need to procure these large fossil fuel based resources to make more power for you. So that's where you actually help the entire system by resolving these supply bottlenecks, and it also reduces your demand for primary energy sources like fossil fuels.
Yeah. So I think this is a great exchange. It has been so far. If there are any more questions, we'd love to take them. Otherwise, I would like to kind of wrap this up. One last thing, Salman, if you could to our startups and new ventures who are still getting into a clean tech space, but they're still shy from it. So, do you have any words of advice or something that you foresee in Pakistan that could actually encourage or motivate them to sort of come into this space?
No, we haven't even scratched the surface of clean energy technologies, and that's the future. The world is going, towards that. चाहे हम आज ना करें, अगले 2-3 साल में तो करेंगे. So
Yeah.
if you have an idea and you're thinking about going into clean energy technology, the market is open. And if you have an innovative product that you want to sell, get in touch with us, because we have a marketplace which is dvm.com.pk, and we help advertise and kind of propose your solution to businesses out there. Clean energy technologies will is the need of the hour, because apart from environment and doing good, they save money. And one
Yeah.
thing that businesses do understand and people understand is saving money. And post corona world, people will need and businesses will need to cut their fat. And there is a
Yep.
lot of fat when it comes to gas usage, generator ka fuel, and power usage. And there is so much that we can reduce. There's just one statistic that obviously one of our advisors, Nida, had made this Sankey diagram, which it traces where the primary energy supply ends up, right? So all of this primary energy supply that we procure in Pakistan, we waste more than 80% of it. So
Yeah.
because energy is neither created, it's not destroyed, it's either transformed into one form to another. So the useful energy is just between 12 to 15%. The wastage is 80%. So
Yep.
because we always think about supply side solution, think about this: how do we reduce this 85% box of wasted energy and bring it into the useful energy bit?
Yeah.
There's so much at play over here. So it's the market is open out there, and I think this is the right time to get in.
So I think that's great. Thank you, Fatma, for your appreciation as well. Thank you, Salman, for your thoughts on that. And I think the time is quite short. The context and the discussion is quite long. I'd love to continue this forever for further, but right now, just a quick thank you to everybody for joining us and for sharing your questions and your knowledge with us as well. Um, Take care. Have a nice evening, and inshallah, we'll try to come back next week with another clean tech superstar to talk with in the Beyond Disruption sessions.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Ira.
Allah.
Thanks. Okay, Khuda Hafiz.
So